Welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got Daniel Franco of Burnt Timber Outfitters. Daniel, how you doing?
Doing good. You, Jay?
Oh, been good. Daniel, you and I have been friends for a long time, and for those listeners that haven't heard you on the podcast before and maybe don't know you, give me a little background on where you grew up and where you live right now.
Well, they're one and the same, Jay. Born and raised in the White Mountains of Arizona, specifically in the thriving metropolis of Heber, population 7. And
and six of you are Francos.
Exactly. Born and raised in Heber, been here my whole life, and still here. So, still live in Heber with my wife and 5 girls.
Good for you, buddy.
So now you understand why I hunt.
Yes, now I understand why you go on long sabbaticals by yourself.
That's it.
That
is it.
Daniel, you've been on the podcast a bunch, and we've gotten great feedback every time you've been on the podcast. You and Mike Hancock, your partner there at Burnt Timber Outfitters, and you guys, I think we met in 2003, maybe 2004.
Something, 3 or 4.
It's been a long time, but we've spent some great times together, turkey hunting and elk hunting and doing all sorts of stuff, sheep hunting. And your primary focus there is Unit 3C. And granted, you hunt, 4B, 4A, 23, Unit 1. Would you say your bread and butter unit is 3C since it's right where you live and where you've grown up?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've Mike and I have hunted it for, as long as I can remember, back when I was in high school. We've spent more time in 3Cs than any other unit. And so, we definitely cut our teeth in 3C. We've done well in 3C. And so it's definitely our bread and butter unit. Obviously we have expanded into Unit 1 and 23, 4B, 3B. A lot of those other units like you mentioned. So, but definitely 3C is our bread and butter. It's my backyard. My house actually is in 3C. So it's definitely high on our list.
And what are the conditions right now in 3C? In this podcast, we're going to talk primarily about elk, and with the 2017 applications moving forward. I wanted to get you on to talk about kind of the vibe in 3C, what's going on up there, how the last few seasons have gone and been for you, kind of the trends you're seeing with the unit, and the timing. I want to talk a little bit about the timing of the dates, coming up in the 2017 season with the archery hunt and then the early rifle hunt, and then the late hunts moving back to December 1st through the 7th. I guess I would say first question is, what is the moisture level as of right now going into this application period that's due February 14th?
Right now we're not sitting under a blanket of snow at this point here in Heber. The north face of the Mogollon Rim does have some snow on it, which is always good. We've actually had quite a bit of rain this year, which has kind of been happening a little more often in the winter times. Normally, back when I was growing up, we were used to snow every winter, and it definitely seems like rain has been pretty consistent these last couple of years, which you're not going to hear me complain at all. But we've had pretty good moisture already this year, quite a bit of rain, and it seems like the last couple of storms we've had, it's rained for half a day or a day, and then of course at night it turns to snow and puts a little blanket of snow on the ground. So there's some light snow on the ground, specifically north slopes, north sides of canyon still have snow, but a lot of the tanks are full. Roads are pretty muddy. So at this point, I would say moisture is great. It seems to be good and wet out there, which is going to translate into spring grass and antler growth. So.
Would you say that it's better? I mean, I guess let me get a feel for it and maybe ask some questions that some listeners might have. In that you're saying that you haven't been getting dumped with snow. You've been getting quite a bit of rain, a little skip of snow here, and then it rains on it. In your mind, is that better for the soil, or is it just not as hard on the animals? What is positive about that?
Well, it's definitely easier on the animals. They don't have to. They don't have to struggle, through a harsh, cold winter where they're fighting the snow for food and whatnot. So it's definitely makes it easier on the animal. As far as the ground, I mean, it does help to have some snowpack, because that does translate into as soon as spring starts to come around and the weather warms up, then that snowpack starts to melt off and really starts to run some water and green up the grass.
So it's like a delayed response almost. It takes it a while for snow to melt.
Yes, yeah. A lot of times, if we can get a good snowpack and it stays frozen and doesn't really warm up to the point where it melts a bunch, then yeah, it will basically give us a delayed rain or snow, if you would, in the first to middle part of March. So.
Gotcha. But correct me if I'm wrong, with, half of January, February, March, April, you could still see some serious snow coming over the next couple months. It's not out of the question for it to, snow 2 or 3 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had snows, here in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years. We've had 8, 10, 12 inches of snow on April 1st. We've had little snows clear into the middle of May even. So, realistically, we're kind of not out of the winter weather until, definitely into April, first part of April, and we've even seen snow kind of trickle later into the end of April and first part of May and whatnot. So.
Daniel, I know 3C, maybe give everybody a little history lesson. We had a little thing called the Rodeo Chetasky Fire, and that changed a unit that you knew as a kid growing up into what it is now, and you've seen it transition. And we've talked about it on previous podcasts, and I encourage the listeners to go back and listen to podcasts that I've done with Daniel if they're interested in Unit 3C. But give us a little bit of a lesson on maybe how 3C was before the fire and how it is now, and just kind of the vibe going on with the unit.
So prior to the fire was in 2002, and prior to that, my whole life growing up, it's always been just a conifer pine forest. Similar to what you would see, up around Flagstaff or the Kaibab, just a lot of pine trees, not real open, definitely not susceptible to glassing. And that's kind of what it was, my whole life growing up, clear up until 2002, when the Rodeo Chetasky Fire came through. At that point, it actually opened up a lot of country. It didn't burn everything. It kind of mosaiced through the trees, left a lot of green pockets, but it did burn quite a bit of the forest, which opened it up. And since then, over the years, it's grown back up with some quite a bit of ground cover that the deer like to eat on. A lot of oaks and shaggy bark juniper have really started to take over, and actually to the point where it's almost too thick, but they've grown back up in a lot of these in that burn area and given it plenty of cover and stuff where the elk and deer and everything, just love it and actually spend a lot more time in the burn than they do in the green. So
with that, you've kind of had to change how you hunt the unit in that. I remember before the fire, you were kind of limited to a few meadows here and there. You had a bunch of ponderosa pine. Basically, north of the 260 was pretty much all junipers, maybe with a few pine stringers. Um,
hmm
what have the elk done since the fire?
Um, they really haven't changed a whole lot. We still have elk down in the lower kind of pinyon and cedar juniper country. We still have a lot of elk that like that burn area, and elk that like the little areas of green pine trees that didn't burn. The big difference is instead of hardly not being able to glass the unit at all, it's made it where we can glass especially a lot of the high country. It's very glassable. You can go glass a lot of that country. You can cover a lot of that country with your eyes, and you're not down on the ground chasing bugles on foot and trying to catch up to as many bulls as you can in a morning or in a day. So definitely has changed. Kind of for the better. It's allowed us to kind of expand the way we hunt a little more. But there's still a lot of those areas where you got to kind of get out and pound the pine trees and see what's in there. So
How have you seen the trophy? I believe they dropped 3C off the alternative management list, which I believe that is managed for high bull to cow ratios, and you can tell me the facts on it, but I believe a couple years ago they dropped it off the management. What have you seen as far as the quality of bulls since they've done that?
Since they've done that, which I'm not sure the exact year, but I want to say about the same 3 or 4 years ago, once they dropped it off the alternative management, the numbers have stayed steady, which is a good thing. And of course now they're kind of catering 3C to a trophy mule deer unit, so they've actually put that on their alternative management mule deer in the unit. But it has as far as the numbers of elk have stayed pretty steady the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years. And to be honest with you, we've seen a little bit of an increase in the quality, which it was after the fire, it really exploded in quality, got really, really good. And then of course they started to do their tribal hunts on the reservation on the Fort Apache, and that really knocked our quality down. They were killing a lot of really good bulls, a lot of older age class bulls on that late hunt, because a lot of our bulls will migrate back to the reservation as soon as the rut's over for the winter. So that hurt us. But since then, here we are, 2016 going into 17. They've been hunting them since 2008, and we're slowly seeing the quality increase. So that's a positive thing.
That's good. I'm looking at the regs right now, and it looks like the archery tags are 125 bull tags, and it looks like, let's see, what's our cow tag numbers in there, Daniel?
Should be 50.
Yeah.
Should be 50 archery cow tags.
Yeah, 50 archery cow tags. Believe that's a no change from last season. Is that correct as far as the bull tags at 125?
That's correct. That's actually been a no change for about the last 3 years.
Okay, and prior to that, didn't they have it like as high as 150 or 175 permits?
I think at one point in time it was actually as high as 200.
Wow.
But yeah, they've cut those down to where we're 125. We got the 50 cow, and even on the early rifle hunt, it used to be as high as 40, and now they've got that cut down to 25. So
was the bull hunt, the archery rifle hunt or muzzleloader they flip flop? Was it 25 last year as well?
Yes. Yep. 25 last year.
And then the late hunts, what did they do with the late hunts?
The late hunt used to be as high as 375 late tags, and now they've got it cut down to 275, which I believe is a no change from last year as well. So, like I said, the numbers are holding steady. So they're actually holding the tag number steady. So, that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me about the quality of bulls. You guys had some hunters last year in the unit. How was the hunt? Now I'm talking specifically about the archery hunt here. How was the actual activity of the hunt with, those dates of September 9th through the 22nd? Across the state, I've been hearing, that it was too early, and these dates in 2017 starting on the 15th through the 28th. I think it's going to make it that much better, but I want to get your opinion on those, on the comparison of the dates and how it was this last season.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's exactly the same thing we saw in 3C with the hunt starting on the 9th. What I noticed is the elk were just starting to get into their rutting activity. They were just starting to get going. And then, of course, you had a huge influx of hunters show up in the woods. And from what I saw, it basically just kind of shut them down. They weren't deep enough into their rutting ritual to kind of carry on through and not care as much about hunters and people and pressure. So that with it starting on the 9th and them just kind of getting rolling, it just suffocated them almost to the point where, I mean, they shut down pretty good. I mean, we had a couple of days that were, pretty slow and pretty quiet, which hurt definitely on the archery hunt. And then by the end of the archery hunt, you had more and more guys filling tags, more and more guys not being able to, take off the entire hunt or be able to hunt the whole time. So as the pressure decreased and died down, then the rut picked up. So that last week of the archery hunt was actually really good. Lots of bugling, lots of running activity, fighting. So yeah, it definitely hurt last year. So on the flip side to that, for 2017, it's gonna kind of just do the opposite. They're gonna, by the 15th, they'll be going and blowing by then. Pretty much fully into their rutting activities and rituals and doing their thing. I think the earliest I can remember ever seeing a cow get bred in 3C was on the 13th of September, which, to us, even at that year, that was pretty early. Typically it tends to be a little later in the year. But, with that starting on the 15th, they're going to be going. So even with the start of the hunt and the hunting pressure that starts, it's not going to affect them near like it did this last year.
Yeah, and I think too a big thing is like Labor Day for 2017 is September 4th, and if you remember last year with the Labor Day, it's almost like and 3C is a nice forested unit. It does get quite a bit of camping pressure and such, and when you put the start of the hunt that close to in some of these units like Unit 1 and even like 9 and 3C where it's a pretty high Unit 8 camping area. You get a lot of those summer, campers and families and RVs and that whole thing. And, with Labor Day being on the 4th this year and with the hunt not starting till the 15th, you've got 11 full days for them to kind of calm and settle down and kind of get into their routine, so to speak. And, the dark moon being on September 20th, I think that is going to play an interesting role in the rut. What are your thoughts about how the moon is going to play in with that September 15th start if the moon is dark on the 20th?
I I think it's going to be awesome. That's one thing that we always tend to struggle with is whenever we have elk rut and full moon, especially during the archery hunt or even the early rifle hunt for that matter. They just spend so much time on their feet at night and going crazy, and it really affects your morning hunts. They tend to shut down early. They get to their beds early, and then of course you do get a little more evening activity on those. But with that being the dark of the moon and kind of kicking right into the start of the peak of their rut, it's going to be good. It's as far as the dates in the moon phase. This is, in my opinion, kind of projecting to be one of the one of the best years we've had in the last, I can think of probably 4 or 5 years. So should be really good.
For sure. I'm looking at the Go Hunt Insider draw statistics, and it's showing last year in 3C for archery that non-residents, I'm talking specifically non-residents here, that 60% of the non-residents with 15 points drew the tag, and 100% with 16 points. In your mind, how does that play into with the non-residents drawing and with the residents? I don't have the not flipping over to the screen with the residents, but I think residents are kind of guaranteed at that 10 or 11 mark.
About 11.
Yeah.
We've seen some guys kind of skip through with 10. It's not real high. A lot of guys with 10 do draw, but pretty much 11 is a guaranteed for the residents. Whereas last year it with the change by the Game and Fish of only giving 50% of the tags to the maximum pass for non-residents, it did bump that from about 12 to 13 up to 15.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then last year, over the years, you guys have had some tremendous success on the archery and the early rifle and the muzzleloader hunts. Would you say, as far as quality of bulls from what you actually saw, bulls that you killed, et cetera, that would you say that the quality's on the upswing, or is it about the same?
I would definitely say it's on the upswing, and that's probably because we had a pretty good year last year. We killed one of the biggest bulls that we've killed in the unit last year on the early rifle hunt, and he was a mid 390s bull that was broke a little bit, missing an extra and missing a couple of inches off of some eye guards in the third.
How big was he?
395.
Wow.
And he was missing from what we figured somewhere between 7 and 8 inches between extra and chip points. We killed that bull last year on the early rifle. We killed a low 370s bull. We killed another bull that was just shy of 360, and we actually saw a couple of other bulls that we just couldn't get killed that were in that 370 to 380 range. So. Wow. I would say that the quality is definitely up. We were impressed last year with the unit. We hit it pretty hard. We had a couple of archery hunters, and then we had 3 early rifle hunters. So we spent quite a bit of time in the unit, and it paid off. We were fortunate. We harvested some great bulls. So
that's awesome. Do you see the elk as consistent on that southern boundary with the White Mountain Apache Indian Reservation, like always, those elk moving back and forth, and as the rut really progresses, you get bulls that actually come off the res, and some people think that they just come off the res and just hang on the res line. I found it when I used to hunt that unit a lot. You'd find what I would call a res bull. They could cross the 260 highway and, be on the north side, or they could virtually be anywhere. A bull elk at night walking can, cover a bunch of ground and be rutting and then, head back to the reservation. Is that kind of the same way that it still is now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's been times where we're hunting, a specific bull in an area, and we're north of 260 by a few miles even. And we've been in there 4 or 5 days trying, chasing this one bull, and all of a sudden one morning we go in there and there's 3 other bulls in there that have come from a couple of miles away to come into there because obviously there was a hot cow or a couple of hot cows in the area. But that's kind of the beauty of 3C is with it bordering the reservation all along that south border. You never know what you're going to see from day to day. Because those bulls, as soon as that peak comes along and, they get cows bred, whatever the case might be, you just never know every morning when you go out what you're going to run into. And to be honest with you, I mean, we've seen bulls even as far as far down north of even Highway 277 that come all the way down there to rut, and then we'll turn and head back to the res once the rut's over. So, yeah, definitely the same types of patterns, and that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah, for sure, because you never know what you're going to get. I'm looking at the late archery. I know those late archery hunts are tough, but with the late rifle dates bumping back December 1st through the 7th, which it's pretty late for our late hunts. They don't get much later than that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it bumped it back about a week.
Yeah, and so my question is, how tough are those late archery hunts in 3A, 3C? I'm looking at, 40% of the non-residents with only 2 bonus points last year drew the tag. So what's the deal with those late archery elk hunts in there?
Well, they're not for the faint of heart, I'll say that. They're definitely tough. By that time, a lot of the mature bulls that are typically in 3C in September, October, have already headed south to the reservation. That's not to say that there aren't some that do hang around or stick around. Every year is a little bit different as far as the rut's concerned, and we've seen in some years when that rut kind of carries on through, where you get some cows that don't get bred on their first or second cycle, and they're still kind of carrying over into the first part of November. We've seen mature bulls, pretty good bulls, 330 to 350 type bulls, still hanging around and still with cows that time of year.
You've actually heard them bugling some too.
Yes, yep. We've heard them bugling. We've been out scouting for the late rifle hunt during that hunt, and actually have heard bulls bugling, seen bulls with cows. But at that point, I mean, they've kind of wised up by then. They're hanging around for one thing and one thing only. I don't think you would be able to slip in on one of those bulls and cow call and get them to come in. It's probably, it's definitely not a September or October hunt where they completely lose their mind. But at least they give away their location. Lots of spot and stock, lots of glassing, and to be honest with you, the quality is just, it's low. Most guys that put in for that kind of go into it with the mindset that, you know what, it's a bull tag, it's an archery bull tag, it's late in the year, and I'm going to shoot the first thing I see with horns. So, and if you go into it with that it's an elk hunt, and I want to kill a bull, and I want to use my bow, then it's not a horrible hunt. I mean, you'll see a lot of elk, especially in those transition areas where they're transitioning from state land to reservation. It's just a matter of getting close enough to be able to get a shot with archery tackle.
Tell me about the late hunt this year being the 1st through the 7th. Is that likely to have snow and be quite a bit colder? And being a week later, I was talking with Steve Chappell about, in generalities, about late hunts on a episode, and he thought that being a week later that it would make those bulls feed. He wasn't specifically talking about 3C, but how do you think that plays into a strategy if someone was wanting to put in for that December 1st through the 7th late hunt?
Well, specifically to 3C, I don't think it's going to really affect it that much being just 1 week later. I do think that those bulls will be up feeding a little bit longer. It seems like the later in the year they go, and even rolling into January and February, I mean, we've seen days where they stay up and feed all day long. They're just trying to regain fat and energy from the rut to make it through the winter. So I think they'll definitely be out feeding. I don't think we're going to be honest with you, I don't think in a week you're going to lose any bulls to the reservation. Most of the bulls that are going to go back to the res are going to be there by the time the first part of November rolls around. So 1 week later, the end of November, the 1st of December, really won't affect it much, in my opinion. it's just the same type of deal. It's the quality issue that we run into on that hunt. You know, typically a lot of your mature bulls are back on the reservation, and what bulls aren't, you're fighting broken points a lot. Bulls that are broken, missing half a horn, multiple tines, that all kind of plays into it.
One thing I didn't ask about is this year it's an early rifle hunt. You killed that big giant on the muzzleloader, correct me if I'm wrong, last season, but this year it's an early rifle, correct?
No, it was actually early rifle last year as well.
Okay, so they didn't flip-flop it. It's going to be early rifle, and there's 25 tags. I've got to think those dates, those bulls will just be losing their mind. Or do you feel like going into October 5th that they'll be really shutting down at the end, or do you think it's just going to be maximum peak as wide open as it gets, and the only challenge is maybe fighting a few broken points?
No, I definitely think towards the end of that hunt, it's going to be tapering off. It seems like from what we've seen over, the many years that we've been out chasing elk in September, it seems like here in 3C specifically, our bulls typically peak between the 20th to the 27th, 28th, somewhere in that week. And after that peak, it definitely does start to taper off as far as activity and craziness of the rut. So it'll definitely start to taper off, which, to be honest with you, is kind of good and bad, because if you've got a bull that you're wanting to kill, with it starting to taper off, a lot of the smaller bulls will leave. He'll be worried about his cows, and it actually makes it a little bit easier to get in on them and kill them at times like that. But yeah, I think broken points will be an issue with it being that late in the year and with the moon phase as well. So
yeah. Let's shift gears. Do you have anything else to add on 3C? I want to talk to you about Unit 1 and 4B a little bit here.
No, I think we've covered it pretty good.
Sounds good. I do want to take a quick second here to thank my sponsors of the podcast. Of course, GoHunt.com Insider has been the title sponsor of this podcast basically from the beginning. And like I discussed here with Daniel before, going over some of these draw odds on GoHunt.com Insider, which is a subscription, a membership-based resource. They have just released their Arizona draw odds, and they have actually broken down with the new non-resident numbers, with 5% of those tags going to non-residents with the max bonus points, and then 5 in the random pool. We now have these new odds, and if you guys use the J Scott Outdoors, the J Scott promo code, you actually get a $50 Coues gift card when signing up. So just go to gohunt.com /insider, use the J Scott promo code. Also like to thank Real Game Calls. Real Game Calls makes the elk reel. They're just about to release the turkey and the buck reels. Go to their website. You get a 20% discount if you use the J Scott promo code. Phone Scope, they make the best digiscoping adapters for being able to convert your phone to any spotting scope or binocular. If you use the J Scott 16 promo code, you get a 10% discount. And then, of course, the Outdoorsmans here in Phoenix, the Optics Authority, Cody Nelson and his crew down there at the Outdoorsmans. If you use the J Scott promo code, you're going to get 10% off on the products down there at the Outdoorsmans. So, guys, I appreciate you supporting the sponsors. They do a great job supporting my podcast, and we've had great partnerships with those 4 companies. And so I just want to thank them, as well as thank you guys, the listeners, for all your loyal support. Daniel, I want to talk just briefly about Unit 4B, because it's kind of, if you will, the redheaded bucktooth stepchild next to such a diamond, such a jewel of 3C. But last year, you assisted Dar and Parker Colburn on his 4B archery hunt, and put them out in one of your little honey holes, and Parker was able to shoot just a awesome bull, quite honestly, for anywhere, but a really awesome bull for 4B. I just get your thoughts on this coming year for 4B, and maybe a little bit of last year and the success. Was that a complete fluke, or and nothing against Dar or Parker or yourself, but I mean 4B is just really not known for those kind of bulls.
Well, and it's not. Dar and I had talked in length prior to him putting Parker in about 4B. We knew he had the points to draw it as a resident, and they went in with the attitude that, hey, we want to get an archery hunt under Parker's belt. We want him to, have a pretty good time. We know it's not a premium unit. We know it's not going to be a 3C or Unit 9 or anything like that. And, I'd been telling him, he said, hey, it's not the greatest unit in the state, but it's got some bulls and it's got some pockets. That's the one thing about 4B is it's extremely pocketed. And I know I've mentioned this in the past on previous podcasts. It's not like the entire unit has elk in it, which when you drive through it, you're thinking, oh, there's got to be elk in here. But for some reason in 4B, they tend to gravitate towards pockets that they like, and they return to the same pockets in September during the rut. And that's kind of where I had put them at in a place that I've hunted for years. It's a little pocket that I could go down there today in January, and I would not see an elk. And I could go in there in July, and I would not see an elk. But for some reason, these elk like to gravitate into this pocket every September, and that's where they rut. It's their ritual. And 4B's got a lot of that. So if you can find those types of areas and those types of pockets, and know they're there and know they exist, and you've hunted them in the past or found them in the past, then you can be successful in that unit. Now, granted, I didn't anticipate them killing a bull of that caliber down there. However, it's not the first time we've seen a bull of that caliber in that country. We've killed a couple of bulls out of there, a couple on the archeries that scored in the 350s. We killed a rifle bull out of there that scored 360. And we actually saw probably the biggest bull I've ever seen in 4B in that same country. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago with a client, and we're just unable to get him killed. So it was it was just one of those things where I knew the elk were in there. I had told Dar, hey, I know you're not going to see any elk in there scouting, but you just trust me. Just go in there, and I guarantee you there'll be elk and there will be bulls. So.
In speaking about the late archery and the late rifle in 4B, that those are kind of tags that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, aren't they?
Yeah, to be brutally honest, yes.
Are you smiling?
I'm smiling.
I can see your face and you're blushing.
Oh yeah.
They're tough.
Yeah,
they're tough.
They're very tough. They're very tough. You don't get the huge influx of bulls that move into that unit during the rut. You do get some. I know for a fact that there's been bulls that have come off of the reservation through 3C and into 4B during the rut, and then as the rut winds down, they turn around and head back. So you don't have a large population of elk to begin with. So when you roll into those late hunts, they can be brutal. They can be extremely tough. If you put in the time and you spend a lot of time in the unit and do your homework, they're not impossible. I know of a couple of guys that had that tag this year and did good. There was a family here in town, locals, that had tags in that unit, and they did exceptional as far as I'm concerned. They did really well. So there's elk. There's just not a lot of elk.
Sure.
So those hunts can be brutal.
Let's jump over to another unit that you really like, and I know your partner Mikey likes it. That's pretty good. Mikey likes it.
Mikey
Um,
likes it. Ask
Mikey
Mikey. He
likes
likes
it.
it.
Yeah. Mike Hancock, you and Mike like Unit 1. Of course, Unit 1 is lumped in with 1, 2B, and 2C. Quite honestly, I don't know that anybody actually hunts 2B and 2C. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Well, I wouldn't say anybody, but we've spent a little bit of time in 2C. But it's kind of like, they lump 3C and 3A together. There are elk in 3A. There's just not a lot of elk. So they lump it together with 3C, kind of the same with Unit 1 and 2B and 2C. There are some elk in the unit, just not a lot, and definitely not enough to support its own hunt. So they lump it in with Unit 1. But yeah, Unit 1's it's a great unit. We've spent quite a few years in it. Mike actually grew up hunting it when he was younger, and has hunted it quite a bit. I think I've even said this on previous podcasts. In my opinion, Unit 1 could be one of the best units in the state, if not the best. However, the biggest issue and the biggest problem that we run into with Unit 1 is just the tag numbers.
yeah, I believe there's 300 archery bull tags, correct?
Yeah, 300 archery bull, and then there's an additional, and I haven't even looked at it this year, but last year I want to say there was 75 archery cow. So you've got 375, and that doesn't seem like a lot for anybody that has been in Unit 1. Unit 1 is a ginormous unit. It's every bit of it is elk habitat and elk country, and pretty much the majority of the unit has elk in it for the most part. What we've really started to see over the last couple of years with, after the Wallow Fire in 2011, when that quality really started to jump up, and the dynamics of that unit changed as well, with being able to glass more, and find these big bulls that a lot of times were living in that dark timber that you never could, ever see or hunt. So with that change as well in the dynamics of that unit, similar to 3C, that's kind of changed the whole hunting game in Unit 1. So,
In your opinion, if they let's just say they got a wild hair and said we want to create the best elk unit in the world, and they dropped it to 100 bull tags and let's say 25 cow tags, in how many years would it take for it to be unrivaled as far as quality?
to be honest with you, if they were to do that this year, it would be phenomenal this year, because that unit has the bulls, it has the quality, it has the quantity, it has the population. It's got everything going for it. The only problem is, the number of hunts and the number of tags that they have in that unit. If they were to drop it this year, it would be phenomenal this year, and even better next year. It would take off and explode. One
Is
thing
there
that we're
anybody
really
petitioning saying, let's ease up on the 300 and let's ease up on some of these late hunts and let's just make just a complete jewel out of the unit? Or I'm sure it goes a little bit on deaf ears because they've got to harvest elk.
They do. They've got to harvest elk. They've got objectives to meet. And to be honest with you, the unit has a lot of elk. In fact, that is kind of one of the issues that we've ran into here in recent years. Is you'll find a bull that you want to kill on that archery hunt, and it's not uncommon for him to have 20, 30, 40. We've even seen it as high as 50, where that one bull has just an astronomical number of cows, which you put that into play, as well as more open country with that burn, and you've got a bow in your hand, and it just makes it almost impossible to get within bow range of that bull to try to kill him. So the numbers are way up there as far as population. So it's hard to kind of convince the game and fish that, hey, we need to cut the bull tags down in order to make it a better hunt when their surveys and everything are telling them, no, we've got plenty of elk. And to be honest with you, that's why they're keeping those tag numbers where they're at.
Gotcha. I do know I've talked to guys that have hunted it over the last couple of years, and some of them have said, if you pull in there late, it's hard to find a place to camp. There's people literally on every pullout, and we've got the summer campers that are still probably up there camping and filtering, starting to filter the way out. But you throw 375 cow tags, you got 375 of your friends up there. It's a challenge.
Well, and that's another one of the big issues that we're seeing up there in Unit 1. It's kind of become, the next Unit 9 where one guy draws a tag and four buddies show up to accompany him. And so now instead of only having 300 guys in the woods, now all of a sudden we've got 800-900 guys in the woods. And the real frustrating thing is it's not uncommon to be on a bull in Unit 1 and working in on him, and all of a sudden see two guys, loop around through the trees and drop down in on him, and neither one of them are even packing a bow. They're just looking for their friend. They got a video camera in their hand, and they're just looking for a friend. And that's another one of the big obstacles that we're seeing in Unit 1 is there's a lot of tags and a lot of hunters, which equals a lot of tag-alongs, a lot of friends, a lot of extras. And so that makes it difficult.
What kind of, I'm scrolling through here, let's see, looks like they're going to have a 40 tag early rifle hunt September 29th through October 5th, 40 tags. How do you see that early rifle hunt stacking up with some of the other early rifle hunts in the state?
It's going to be good just because the unit's so good. One thing that we've kind of noticed here in past years is for one reason or another, people don't seem to be harvesting the biggest bulls on those early rifle hunts in Unit 1. And I'm not an expert. I couldn't, tell you, well, this is why. My opinion is that because there's so many archery hunters and so much pressure, that a lot of these bulls get pushed from where they're rutting, from where they, start out the rut, that by the time you get through with 2 weeks of archery hunts, it really pushes those bulls and cows and spreads them out and pushes them into pockets. We especially saw this a couple of years ago where they got, pushed out of areas and traveled as far as 3 or 4 miles into little areas to get away from people. So by the time that rifle hunt rolls around, it's with it only being a week long, it's hard to try to find some of these bigger bulls that they may have scouted and seen all summer long or found right before the start of the archery hunt, and all of a sudden now they're gone. So we've kind of seen that trend the last couple of years. And I'm not saying they don't kill any big bulls. Obviously, they've killed some really, really big bulls on that early rifle and early muzzleloader hunt. But as far as kind of the general norm, it seems to us like they're killing bigger bulls and better bulls on the archery hunt than they are on the early rifle.
How do you see Unit 1 with the 30 tags late archery? To me, that seems like it's probably a pretty good hunt. If there's only 30 tags, it's late archery. You might get, although it's a week later this year and it's in November, obviously. The dates are November 10th through November 23rd. I mean, there's so many elk in Unit 1. Do you potentially see there being some bugling, some crazy, kind of late bugling? And how would that be, do you think, compared to, say, a 3C late archery? Wouldn't the late archery in Unit 1 be quite a bit better than the 3C hunt?
Absolutely. Hands down. I mean, it would be, I would burn a 3C late archery tag for the chance to hunt a Unit 1 late archery tag. The big thing that you get in Unit 1 has a lot of bulls that stay there year round, that are resident elk, that will winter there, that will shed their antlers there in the springtime. Um, so they don't get the huge migration, if you will, back to the reservation a lot of times as the rut winds down. A lot of those bulls do stay there. So, a guy can glass that unit now that the burn has come through and opened it up quite a bit. It's more susceptible to glassing. And I actually spoke to a guy last year that had that Unit 1 late archery, and he got on bulls on a couple of different mornings that were bugling and, giving away their position, and he was able to slip in and got multiple shots and kill the bull. So, yeah, definitely. It probably one of the better late archery hunts in the state. I would say probably between that and 23, those are probably two of the best late archery hunts in the state. And with Unit 1 only having 30 tags, and as big as that unit is, if a guy can brave the cold and put on his long johns, he could have a great hunt in that unit.
Time to put the longies on. The late hunt in Unit 1 is December 1st through December 7th, and there's 325 bull tags. And then the week after that, the December 8th through the 14th is the antlerless hunt in there, 300 tags. But you kind of like that Unit 1 late hunt because of the glassing ability, don't you?
We do. It's more glassable, and there's a lot more elk. Very, very different than 3C where everything's moving out. A lot of it stays there in Unit 1. So you've got elk to see, elk to chase. Last year we actually had 2 clients in 3C on that late elk hunt. And that first day, I think between myself and then Devin and our clients, I think that first day we saw close to 55 bulls on that first day. And actually had a heartbreaker. We actually shot a bull on opening morning, center punched him, watched him go over the ridge. He was right at the top of the ridge. He went over the ridge, and long story short, we blood trailed him for 800-900 yards, and some other hunters that were in there, actually saw the bull the next day and watched him climb out of a bottom and go clear up over the top of another big ridge, and we were unable to relocate him. And everybody gave us the same story that, it was a perfect right behind the shoulder shot, and still to this day don't know what happened there. But he was probably right there at 360.
And that was in Unit 3C or Unit 1?
That was in Unit 1.
Okay. I thought you said 3C. Yep. So
no, that was in Unit 1.
So close to having a 360 bull, and he just got away from you, and that happens.
Yeah, and it does. It's it's part of hunting. Not sure why, if it was a bullet or what the case might have been, but it is what it is. So still managed to kill a couple of solid bulls. So had a great hunt. Saw a lot of elk, a lot of bulls, and it's cold that time of year up there in Unit 1, but
yeah, I was going to ask you
in our.
Yeah, how does the how does the week later play into? Does it make Unit 1 actually better? Do you think going a week later?
I don't think it really matters that much with just a week. They're already going to be where they're at. A lot of the bulls that we were seeing during the late hunt this year, Mike had Devin and seen while they were in there on the deer hunt. And then we had seen in there a couple of weeks prior to. So, they were already where they were going to be. It was just a matter of getting in there and getting on them and getting them killed. So I really don't think that 1 week is going to change hardly anything. They're going to be in there. I don't think the weather is going to be, any colder. It's always going to be, pretty cold in Unit 1 on that late hunt. You just have to be ready for it. So.
Seems like they've gotten quite a bit of snow. I was seeing some reports, I believe, over at the Fort Apache at the ski area there, and they've got pretty good skiing over there, which, some years it's a little bleak.
Yeah, and that's one of the big positives about Unit 1, about Unit 27, 3C, and even, parts of 23 is, with the Mogollon Rim and the reservation and all that higher elevation, higher country, we're not quite as susceptible to the drought as like a Unit 9 or a Unit 10, where it seems like, if we can just get some moisture in the winter and in the spring, our elk react to it very well, and we, I'm not saying we're completely out of the drought picture, because we have had drought years, but it seems like if we can just get some moisture, a little bit of moisture, it tends to hold on a lot longer up here, and we don't see those drought effects near as bad as some of the other units in the state.
Yeah, for sure. And you've got quite a bit more live water and, quite a bit of water, actually. You got tanks and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
For the listeners out there, you can follow Daniel on Instagram at Franco. That's FRANCO_BTO. And the BTO obviously stands for Burnt Timber Outfitters. And his partner and associate is Mike Hancock, and he's Mikey, MIKEE_BTO. And then Jay Lewis is J, the letter J, Lewis, LEWIS_BTO. Daniel, Burnt Timber Outfitters, you would say send the listeners to there, and then they can get your phone number, and if they want to talk to you more about 3C or Unit 1 or 4B or 23, any of those units, they can call you on the phone, right?
Yeah, they can get on our website, burnttimberoutfitters.com. It has mine and Mike's cell phone numbers and emails. They go right to our phone, so we get emails fairly quick. We try to return them as quick as we can. We enjoy talking about, hunting elk in Arizona. So we welcome anyone to give us a call and kind of cuss and discuss strategy and whatnot. And we've also got our Burnt Timber Outfitters on Instagram as well. So between the four of us and that, we try to stay on it and post some stuff up. So.
Sounds good. Now let's really talk turkey. Daniel's taking a group. Gobble. Let's talk Mexico Coues deer. Daniel's taken a group down to a ranch that Dar and I went to in February when we're down in Mexico scouting ranches. We found a big giant ranch, and this particular ranch is, quite honestly, it's just a little bit far for us to take with paying clients because of the logistics of getting in and getting out of the ranch, and with the road being a little bit chewed up. And Daniel and his crew saw the pictures and heard the excitement in Dar and I's voice about the ranch. Are you guys getting excited to head south for the Coues rut?
We are. We're very excited. In fact, if I recall correctly, I think your exact words were, "I think I found the Holy Grail." So we didn't really need to look at pictures. We just said, "Okay, we're in."
Yeah, well, Dar would probably argue that I've found the Holy Grail once or twice before, so that maybe didn't pan out. But it's one of these properties that's just a beautiful, big property, and I think the potential there is endless. It's just got the look. It's got kind of all of the country. It's got enough rough. It's got enough steep. It's got enough thick. Mixed with some big yellow ridges and some open areas and really good glassing points, and the owners put in a bunch of roads, and really it's one of those ranches that we really don't know what we've got. And you guys are, I told you from the beginning, you guys are kind of the guinea pigs, and you're like, oink, oink, put us in the game, coach. And so you've got a great crew of guys going down that can really glass. And, Dar's just licking his chops because he says, if one thing we send Franco's group down there, we'll know what we got after a week of those guys hunting there. So I think that the opportunity to we can't control the weather or the rut or anything like that, but the timing
Right.
of going down, that week you're going down the same week we're going down,
Hmm.
I'm expecting good things from you guys for sure.
Well, so are we, and we'll try to leave a few bucks for you for next year, but I'm not going to give you any promises.
Yeah,
And
I hope you all
yeah, we're
shoot
excited.
120s. Yeah, yeah, no, it's
We're that's kind of our break from guiding and everything. We guide and we help clients all year, and we love it. But there's just something about pulling the trigger for yourself. So, we always look forward to these Mexico Coues deer hunting trips. Me and Mike and Devin and our BPO family and guys that help us every year and friends. And yeah, it should just be an absolute blast. And we'll know more here in a couple of weeks. So
are you
we're
taking
excited.
that brother-in-law of yours again? Because dang, you took him last year and posted him up on a point and he killed 125 or some crazy looking buck, and I think he would not get the invite this year if he was my brother-in-law.
You know, I thought about it. I kicked it around actually, and he wasn't one of the first ones that I invited. I could come, and he's going to hear this, but he already knows this.
Yeah.
It's just such a big ranch and so many tags that we started putting the crew together, and we had a couple of tags, and I just so you know, I've given him specific instructions that if he happens to kill the biggest buck again this year, he is done. He can find his own group of guys. He can find his own way down to Mexico because he's sure as heck ain't hunting with me.
Oh
So,
man, I love it. I hope he kills the biggest, gnarliest, just crazy buck. I would just, the
oh,
needling that I would be able to do over the next year of Andrew
I
killing
would just,
another big buck. He'll have to find a
would just
ride
puke.
back to the border because you guys will leave him in the dust. He's already the brother-in-law, so he gets he gets hazed as it is, and now all of
Oh
a
yeah,
sudden he's gonna shoot
and
another
he does
giant.
too.
Yeah, I know he does.
Poor
So,
guy.
well,
But
buddy,
yeah, we're excited.
yeah, good. It'll be good to see you down there when we cross. And yeah, I'm real excited to see how you guys do with your crew, and I know you'll have a great time. And
Yeah,
yeah, you guys did great last year, and so yeah, well, it's been great talking to you about 3C and Unit 1, and a little bit about 4B. Also, I encourage the listeners out there, if they're interested in any of those units and have any follow-up questions, to look Daniel up and his crew, burnttimberoutfitters.com. Daniel, it's always a pleasure. You've been a great friend for many years, and just look forward to many more adventures. Thanks for coming on here on the podcast, okay?
absolutely. Thank you, Jay.
All right, buddy. Take care. God bless.